Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the morning, 15 minutes to change your life. Heichaltzu. Continuing on what we're talking about, so we're starting to get a little bit involved in depth, in person and more personal. Yesterday we were talking about that, or discussing after the recording about how this can apply itself to shidduchim. I think in general applies to a lot of different areas, how we look at people and how we judge them. And essentially what we were saying yesterday is, so what we're saying till now is sort of, besides the questions and the need to get answered, is essentially we have these two contrasting things as midyan, which is separation and strife and baseless hatred. And then there is Shem Havayim, which is all that unity. And we said midyan is like, you have these different levels in Torah, which is, we said, a world that doesn't get along and chaotic, and Chesed doesn't get along with Gevurah and all these things. But those represent sort of the 7 Canal Nations that we have to conquer. Whereas midyan, we didn't have to conquer, we have to destroy. Why? Because midyan is sort of the source, so to speak, of all these issues. The baseless hatred. Yeah, top of page 27. And we're gonna, so instead of saying a story now, we're gonna say a story inside the shiur. Well, he brings it down. So top of page 27. So at times this hatred settles on specific points. So we're saying yesterday that there's the difference between sinas chinam, which you said is soine chinam, that nothing actually happened to you for you to hate them. And that's what we're talking about. Versus sinah for a specific reason, like coming from a gevurah. But sinas chinam is bechinam. So at times this hatred settles on specific points, i.e. a person will feel that he has a reason to explain his hatred for his fellow man. But in reality, however, this is only a rationalization that follows after the fact. So you might come and you say, it's not like we're discussing about in shidduchim. It's like it bothers me. Like I didn't enjoy that shidduch. I don't like the person. And he's saying if it's coming from sinas chinam, so there's no real hate base to it. But you might come and say, oh no, it's because they don't look good, or because they're not mature, or whatever it is. But he's saying that that's not the real reason. That's the excuse, so to speak, you bring after the fact. The specific reason and not the actual cause of the hatred. It is only that he found the pretext of false charge to justify himself before others. It's like, so to speak, anti-Semitism. It's not because of what we did. That's the excuse. It's because we didn't. In the ace of Shenis Yaakov, there's a rule, the ace of hates Yaakov. So therefore, they hate us. So they use the rule, it's because of Israel, it's because of this, because of the blood libels, and they always give another excuse. But essentially, they hate you. However, they do not represent the true cause. Instead, this hatred arises solely from his inability to tolerate others. And he's saying essentially why this all happened is because we can't tolerate something else, someone else. Why? He said his hatred arises solely from his inability to tolerate another. Its cause is yeshus, which he translates here as self-concern. We're so self-concerned and worried about ourselves that we can't fit in someone else. And someone else is, and we're going to harp on this a lot, that someone else sort of gets in the way of me. And it's very uncomfortable. And we're going to discuss this more. Why? Because he is important in his own eyes, meaning we feel we're very important, but you could say it in sort of a different language, not just that we feel important, but we feel like our preservation is dependent on this. Included in this concept of yeshus is self-concern, is the fact that the person's feelings of self-concern dominate every particular aspect of his life. This is why I cannot tolerate another. Meaning to have someone else, or it's like the example of, let's say, people that can't tolerate questions, like people that are religious, that you can't ask them any questions. This is how we do it, and that's all. Why? Because it gets in the way of the yeshus, their little makeup of a world that exists within them. It's very uncomfortable if you start to question it, because it shows what they don't really understand. But when it comes in here, it's like you have your yeshus, your own world exists, So it's hard when there's someone else coming in there, because that takes away from your world, the way you see the world, the way your world exists. And so it's very uncomfortable. Yeah, whereas you're comfortable with yourself, the opposite of it is when you're comfortable with yourself, so you have no issues and you have space for other people. But when you're feeling very self-conscious, so it's like very uncomfortable, and everyone, it makes you uncomfortable. And that's why it might be, some people that are self-conscious, they have a hard time going to public places. Why? Because they're so self-conscious, always thinking about how everyone else is looking at them, and they're being it's very yeshistic, not in the ego type of yeshus, but like he's saying here, the self-centered type of yeshus, that it's all that you look at the world as it revolves around you, and because you look at that in that way. Yeah. Someone wrote an empty bucket can't fill anyone else's. There's a famous book in our house, at least. It's called I think it's Dina the Bucket Filler. Sorry, the Bucket Filler. Yeah, and essentially because the yeshus is a feeling of empty, that you have nothing inside. One of the ways, there's a lot of different ways to describe it. We're going to discuss this. And essentially, yeshus, but in like reality, yeshus is the feeling of separateness from God, and it's very difficult when you feel separated from God to get along with other people, and that's why the Ahavas Yisroel in Tanya, it's because of the neshama. If it's because of the guf, so then we're always separated. And we're going to discuss this more. Top of page 28. So because of his yeshus, he does not leave room for anyone else. It compels him, as it were, to view another's existence as detracting from his own. And because of this yeshus, because of this self-centeredness, because it's all about you, to anyone else, it's like when you're complaining about something, or something's bothering you, and someone else talks his opinion, you can't handle that opinion, because it's getting in the way of your opinion, and it's all about you. So there's no room for anyone else. Therefore, you're going to tolerate a person. Like a simple example of this: if you're unhappy, I was at a Rebbe recently, and there I said, he goes, "Why should the guy on the street suffer because of your mood?" Meaning, when you walk down the street, you're unhappy, so your face looks unhappy, and you don't smile at anyone, and you don't make the surrounding environment a positive one. Why? Why should they suffer? Or it's like you come home to your roommates, or you come home to your kids. Why should they suffer because you had a hard day at work? I'm not saying you don't have to deal with it, but it doesn't mean they have to suffer. It's like when I was growing up, my father used to tell me, like, we don't need to suffer because you didn't get enough sleep, or because you're in a bad mood. And this is sort of, he's saying, the yeshus doesn't leave anyone else. If my life is not going good, no one's life can go good. It's all self-centered. He compels him, as a word to view another's existence, distracting from his own. And then you can't think about anyone else, because if you think about them, it's taking away from you, because it's all yeshus. Therefore, you cannot tolerate that person. It's like competition to them. And also, we're not thinking about them and thinking about their emotions and how they feel. It's not about them. It's all on me. We're so self-involved. Thus, it is primarily his own yeshus that leads him to view another person as an opponent. And therefore, you look at someone else, and then they're not just someone else, but they become an opponent to you, something that you have to be careful of and worry of. And it's like, this person just living, just doing their life. Like, why do we have to get so heavy with them? But it's because of our own yeshus, and we're going to discuss this. And there's a book, what is his name? Tversky, Allah Shalom, he has a book. It's called How to Get Yourself Out of Your Way. And this is sort of this discussion of yeshus. It's all about you. It's all ourselves. It's all the world. It begins and ends with us, and there's no one else. And everyone else is in the way of that. And this is the story. So the concept explains here is illustrated by a well-known story. A Torah scholar once complained to the Tzemach Tzedek that his colleagues were not treating him with due respect. And he said, "Wherever I move about in the base medrash, people always stepping on me." So Tzemach Tzedek replied, "When you've spread yourself over the whole house of study, someone will be treading on you wherever they step." So he's saying, when a person is preoccupied with self-concern, he will not find a place for others and will constantly view them as intruding upon him. So he's saying, the people are bothering me, or they're disturbing me. It's because you're pushing yourself out there. It's like trying to daven 770, and you're taking up a lot of space. So then everyone's like, why is everyone pushing on me? It's like I have a kid's book, and talking about the wedding of the Rebbe. and it was very, so they're trying to show how it was very packed. So there's like a joke over there. That one person is overweight, and he says, "I wish I was skinnier, so I'd have more space." And one guy is very skinny. He says, "I wish I was bigger, so it'd be less squashy." The point is, it's like everything takes in the way. Like it's in the Self-Tzedek, he's saying you're so self-centered, and that guy he doesn't care about you. And a lot of times in life, we're constantly thinking, what is this person thinking about me? Or how do they think? What do they think? It's not about you. They're not thinking about you. And life's not, and that's a lot of times when people have very low self-esteem, they're constantly thinking about things in that way. And essentially the low self-esteem is a yeshus in a very different form, but it's very self-centered. So they're looking at themselves, everything in themselves. I don't want to speak because what are they going to think? And how's that going to look on me? And it's all goes back to being to how it is within us. And therefore you can't have time to think about anyone else and what about that other person's feelings and how can we help that person and things like that. So his opposition to the other person is not in a specific factor. Instead, he sees him as a challenge to his entire existence. And therefore, when someone else speaks or says something, it's like bothers us and it's like uncomfortable and we can't handle it. Because if they're doing something, we're taking up, so to speak, all the space. So when we're taking up the space, we have no space for both of us. So if we're here, then they can't be there. So it bothers us. And we'll sit there and we'll argue with them and argue what they say. I've been to the rings before where these types of things happen. And people say things and it gets very heated and you can feel the tension in the room. And it's so interesting. And it's like, I don't understand why it is happening, but this is essentially what it is. It's our self-centered, our yeshus, that is causing this to happen. So the mere existence of another person detracts from his yeshus. Because yeshus is all self-centeredness. So my self-centeredness takes up all the space. Someone else is there, it's getting in the way. That person was totally in it for us, then would be good. But it isn't. That person has his own things and his own life and his own worries and matters. So then it detracts from me. It's very uncomfortable. And prompts him to view the others as an opponent, making it impossible to tolerate them. In contrast, the realm of holiness is characterized by bittul. That's all by the negative. So see, it's the yeshus breeds about separation and you can't get along and you have a hard time. Whereas on the other hand, I'm going to discuss this later. It's like a simple realization is that how many people do we have that we can discuss things with deeply and sincerely and open ourselves up with? And how uncomfortable does that feel? And why is that uncomfortable? It's because of the yeshus. What are they going to, like how they're going to see us? I'm going to say like, I have my own world that I've made up for myself, and how do they fit into that? They don't fit into that. It doesn't work. And they're an opponent to me because they might be better than me if they realize what I am. And he talks about this later. In contrast, the realm of holiness is characterized by bittul, self-effacement. So the Alter says in Tanya, the realm of holiness encompasses only an entity upon which the holiness of the Holy One, blessed be He, rests and can be extended to him. And he rests only on such entities that are bottled to him. So Hashem could only be in a place that is bottled. When an entity is concerned with itself, it closes itself off to godliness. Conversely, by rising above self-concern, it or he leaves place for him. Meaning, bittul doesn't mean that I don't exist. It means my whole existence is godly. And it's a much harder level because you have to reach deeper within yourself. Yeshus is because we feel ourselves as separate from God, so we have to survive. We have to like sort of, everyone is like the threat. We have to like fight everyone, and we have to hold us onto ourselves and hold on to our pride. Pride is a big issue in Yeshus. That the other person is going to make you look weak, and I've seen that before, unfortunately. And when you have and again, and having the pride is not, and the Yeshus is not. It's not a positive. It's not an ego in the sense. That's why he says self-concern. It's not an ego thing that's like, oh, I'm better than everyone. It's really coming from a place of feeling that I'm a nobody. I don't have anything, so I got to like fight this. That's what the Yeshus. Because Yeshus is the feeling of separateness from God. So what are you? You're really nothing. Because really, what are we? What are we really? We're all chelkel kamimal. We're part of God. And bittul feels that we're not separated from God. So when we feel godliness, we can have God in, and then we can connect with everyone else's godliness, and it all comes in together. Whereas the yeshus we're saying is not that feeling. So it's like there's me and then there's him. Whereas bittul, there's godliness, there's my godliness and your godliness. We all have that same thing, all that connection, and hence by oneness and synergy, that's what you have by the bittul of the kedusha, because one's attitude is one of bittul. He leaves room for others, and therefore you have space for others, because that other person doesn't take up space for you. Because your lakus is not spreading itself out there. It's not in a way that it takes up space. It's in a way that it leaves space, because everything going on us, we're just reconnecting to the root of everything. By saying he leaves room for others, we mean he accepts them and becomes one with them. And now you can accept them. That's sort of like you're going to shlichus or speaking to someone, listen to someone, and someone can come and tell you things are totally against what you hold to be true, and you can listen to it and you can accept it. Not that you agree, but you can understand. You have a place of wholeness within yourself because you have this bittul, so you can understand them, you listen to them, and you can be there for them. It's a very thing to what the word is called. Oh, I gotta stop. Anyway, and this is the point that he's saying, that you come from bittul, so you have a space everyone else. Their space doesn't infringe on your space. Like the story of the Canal Nations, he was saying that you're coming from a yashus, so in the room, there's you go to any like a wedding hall or something, they have a sign that says how many people can be in there. It's very defined. Why? Because that's yashus. Whereas you have bittul, everyone can be in there. We'll just come in. Yeah, it's gonna be continued tomorrow. I don't want to go over too long.